July 27, 1909, off the coast of South Africa, passengers aboard the steamship SS Waratah watched the horizon with growing unease. The 500-foot liner, carrying 211 souls, had just sent its final wireless message. Within hours, the Waratah would vanish completely. No wreckage, no bodies, no trace of one of the most advanced vessels of its era. The official explanation cited a sudden storm. But weather reports from that night showed only moderate seas. Multiple vessels in the area reported calm conditions. What happened to the Waratah was only the beginning. Over the next century, dozens of ships would disappear under circumstances that defy conventional explanation. Experienced crews, modernequipment.com, sees, then nothing. The patterns are undeniable. The questions remain unanswered. The Waratah had been called unsinkable by its builders. The vessel featured watertight compartments, the latest navigation equipment, and experienced officers. Captain Joshua Ilbrey had 30 years at sea, but something troubled passengers on that final voyage. Several reported the ship rolled dangerously in moderate swells. A prominent passenger, Claude Sawyer, disembarked at Durban, claiming the vessel felt unstable. He refused to continue, citing a recurring nightmare of the ship capsizing. Sawyer watched the Waratah depart on July 26th. The next day, another ship reported passing the liner in good weather. That was the last confirmed sighting. When the Waratah failed to arrive in Cape Town, search vessels deployed immediately. They found nothing, no oil slicks, no floating debris, no lifeboats. For a ship that size to vanish without leaving any trace seemed impossible. The inquiry that followed raised more questions than answers. Naval architects testified the Waratah's design was fundamentally unstable, with a high center of gravity, but the ship had completed multiple voyages without incident. Theories multiplied: rogue wave, structural failure, sudden capsizing, yet none explained the complete absence of wreckage. Ships that sink catastrophically still leave debris fields. Multiple expeditions have searched for the Waratah's remains. Using modern sonar and deep-sea technology, researchers have scanned thousands of square miles of ocean floor. They've found nothing definitive. If the ship sank, where investigators believe, the wreckage should be findable. The ocean depth in that area averages 1,500 feet, accessible to modern equipment. But the Waratah remains hidden as if it never existed. 9 years later, another vessel would vanish under even stranger circumstances. The USS Cyclops was a massive Navy collier, 542 feet long, capable of carrying 12,000 tons of coal. She departed Barbados on March 4, 1918, bound for Baltimore. The Cyclops never arrived. With her went 306 crew and passengers. To this day, it remains the single largest loss of life in U.S. Navy history, not involving combat. The disappearance prompted the largest search operation conducted up to that time. Navy vessels scoured the shipping lanes. Aircraft flew search patterns. Nothing was found. The Navy investigation considered every possibility. German U-boats operated in the Atlantic, but no submarine claimed the Cyclops. Germany's naval archives, examined after the war, contained no record of attacking the vessel. Structural failure seemed unlikely. The Cyclops had recently undergone maintenance in Rio de Janeiro. Inspections found her seaworthy. The cargo of manganese ore was heavy, but well within the ship's capacity. Weather records from March 1918 showed no major storms along the Cyclops route. Multiple ships traversed the same waters that week without incident. The ocean was calm. What makes the Cyclops case particularly disturbing is the complete radio silence. The ship had wireless equipment. Standard procedure required regular position reports. The Cyclops sent none after leaving Barbados. One crew member had disembarked in Rio, claiming the captain was unstable. Lieutenant Commander Worley reportedly made bizarre decisions during the voyage south. But erratic leadership doesn't explain a ship's total disappearance. Theories have ranged from spontaneous structural failure to mutiny to paranormal causes. The truth is simpler and more unsettling. We don't know. A massive steel vessel with over 300 people aboard, modern communication equipment, and experienced officers simply ceased to exist. No distress signal, no debris, no survivors. The pattern was emerging. Large vessels, experienced crews.com, conditions, then nothing. In January 1921, the 5-masted schooner Carroll A was found aground off Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. The ship was intact. Sails were set, Navigation equipment remained in place, but the crew was gone. All 11 men had vanished. Food was still cooking in the galley. Personal belongings remained undisturbed. The lifeboats were missing, but that was the only sign of deliberate departure. Coast Guard investigators found the ship's logbook missing. Navigation charts were absent. The ship's clock had stopped, but nothing indicated violence or struggle. The last confirmed sighting of the Deering with crew aboard came from a lightship keeper off Cape Lookout. He reported a crewman shouting that the ship had lost its anchors. The voice seemed strained, urgent. That detail troubled investigators. Losing anchors was concerning but not catastrophic. Why would the crew abandon a seaworthy vessel over missing ground tackle? Some suggested piracy. Others pointed to Prohibition-era rum runners. The Deering's route took her through waters known for illegal alcohol smuggling. But pirates typically take cargo or the ship itself. They don't leave a perfectly good vessel to run aground. The official investigation concluded with uncertainty, because unknown became the final determination. The Carroll A Deering was scrapped, her timbers sold for lumber. But questions remained. Why take the logbook and charts but leave everything else? What prompted experienced sailors to abandon a sound ship in open water? The disappearance occurred during the same period as the Cyclops. Some researchers have attempted to connect the cases, suggesting a predator operating in Atlantic shipping lanes. Evidence for such theories is thin, but the timing is undeniable. Decades would pass before another case emerged with similar disturbing characteristics. The MV Joyita was a merchant vessel operating in the South Pacific. On October 3, 1955, she departed Samoa for the Tokelau Islands with 25 people aboard. The Joyita never reached her destination. 5 weeks later, a merchant ship found her drifting 600 miles off course. The vessel was partially flooded but still afloat. Everyone was gone. No crew, no passengers, no bodies. The radio was tuned to the international distress frequency, but the antenna cable was broken. What made the Joyita case extraordinary was the vessel's construction. Cork-lined compartments made her virtually unsinkable, even heavily flooded. She could remain afloat indefinitely. The ship's doctor's bag was found conspicuously bloodstained, but no other evidence of violence appeared. Navigation equipment was missing. The ship's logbook had been taken. Investigators discovered the Joyita had been listing badly before the crew disappeared. One engine was disabled, but these problems didn't explain abandoning an unsinkable vessel in good weather. Official reports suggested the crew abandoned ship fearing it would sink, only to perish in the ocean. But experienced Pacific sailors would know the Joyita's construction. They would know she couldn't sink. Alternative theories proliferated. Japanese fishing vessels operating illegally in the area, pirates, mutiny. None fit the evidence completely. The blood-stained medical bag suggested injury or illness. But why remove the injured person and everyone else? Why disable the radio? Why take the logbook? The Joyita was eventually salvaged and returned to service. Years later, she ran aground and was abandoned permanently. The mystery of her missing crew remains unsolved. 25 people vanished from an unsinkable ship in calm seas. Not one body was ever recovered. Not one piece of conclusive evidence explained their fate. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. Modern vessels experienced crews, unexplained disappearances, but the cases were about to enter a new era of technological sophistication. The SS Marine Sulphur Queen was a T2 tanker converted to carry molten sulfur. On February 2, 1963, she departed Beaumont, Texas, with a cargo of 15,000 tons of liquid sulfur heated to 275 degrees Fahrenheit. The ship carried 39 crew members. Captain Joseph Martin had extensive experience with sulfur carriers. The vessel had modern navigation and communication equipment. On February 4th, the Marine Sulphur Queen sent a routine position report. She was near the Florida Keys, on schedule for her destination in Virginia. That was the last anyone heard from her. When the tanker failed to arrive, the Coast Guard launched an immediate search. They found debris, life jackets, a name board, but no survivors, no bodies. No bodies, no clear explanation for why a modern vessel would sink without distress signal. The sulfur cargo was inherently dangerous. If the heating system failed, the sulfur would solidify, potentially causing catastrophic stress on the hull. But the ship's heating equipment was inspected regularly. Naval architects who examined the wreckage pattern suggested explosive structural failure. The debris field indicated the ship broke apart suddenly, But what caused such a failure? The Marine Sulphur Queen had a troubling history. Coast Guard inspections found significant structural problems. The ship's hull showed cracks and fatigue. Repairs were ordered but inadequately completed. Some investigators believe the company prioritized profit over safety. The vessel should have been retired. Instead, it was patched and sent back to sea. But even structural failure should produce warning signs. The crew had time to launch lifeboats. The radio should have transmitted distress. Modern vessels don't simply explode without sequence of events. The official inquiry cited structural failure as probable cause. Families of the crew received minimal compensation. The case was closed, but questions persist. Why no distress signal? If the hull failed catastrophically, why were life jackets found intact, suggesting crew had time to dan them? The Marine Sulphur Queen joined a growing list. Not all disappearances involve total mystery, but the pattern of modern ships vanishing with minimal or confusing evidence continued. In 1967, a case emerged that remains one of the most baffling maritime disappearances ever documented. The Witchcraft was a 23-foot cabin cruiser, brand new, equipped with every safety feature available. Owner Dan Burek was an experienced boater. On December 22nd, Burek and a friend, Father Patrick Horgan, took the Witchcraft 1 mile offshore to view Miami's Christmas lights. At 9 p.m., Burek radioed the Coast Guard. His boat had struck something underwater. He needed a tow. The Coast Guard arrived 19 minutes later. The Witchcraft was gone. No debris, no people, no trace. The disappearance defied physics. The Witchcraft was equipped with foam flotation. Even completely swamped, it couldn't sink. Coast Guard tests proved the boat could remain afloat under any damage scenario. Weather that night was perfect: calm seas, clear skies, excellent visibility. Multiple boats were in the area. None reported distress or unusual events. The Coast Guard search was immediate and thorough. Helicopters, multiple vessels, divers, they found nothing. Not a life jacket, not a seat cushion, not a single piece of the Witchcraft. Burek was wearing a distinctive orange jacket. His friend wore clerical clothing. Both should have been easily visible if in the water. The area where they disappeared had moderate depth and clear water. Official explanations suggested the men fell overboard and drowned, but that doesn't explain where the boat went. An unsinkable vessel doesn't vanish in calm water 1 mile from shore. Some researchers have proposed sudden waterspout, others suggest collision with unknown underwater object, but a waterspout would leave witnesses. An underwater collision wouldn't make an unsinkable boat disappear. The Witchcraft case remains officially unsolved. No bodies were recovered. No wreckage was found. 2 men and an unsinkable boat simply ceased to exist 19 minutes after calling for help. The Coast Guard's official file on the Witchcraft is remarkably thin. The investigation concluded quickly. Evidence suggests the case was considered too strange to pursue. If the Witchcraft represents an extreme example, the next case shows that size and modern technology offer no protection from unexplained disappearance. The MV Derbyshire was a bulk carrier, one of the largest British merchant ships ever built. At 975 feet long, she could carry 169,000 tons of cargo. In September 1980, she departed Canada, loaded with iron ore, bound for Japan. 44 crew members were aboard. The ship had modern navigation, multiple redundant communication systems, and sophisticated weather monitoring equipment. On September 9th, the Derbyshire encountered Typhoon Orchid in the Pacific. Weather reports warned of severe conditions. The ship's final message indicated she was altering course to avoid the worst of the storm. The Derbyshire was never heard from again. No distress signal was sent. A massive modern vessel, with every communication tool available, went silent without warning. Search operations began immediately. Aircraft scanned thousands of square miles. Nothing was found. Eventually, a few life jackets and debris washed ashore in Japan. The initial investigation concluded the ship sank in the typhoon. Case closed. But families of the crew demanded answers. How does a state-of-the-art vessel, designed to withstand the worst weather, sink without even sending an SOS? Pressure from families eventually led to one of the most sophisticated wreck searches ever conducted. In 1994, 14 years after the sinking, researchers located the Derbyshire's remains at a depth of 13,000 feet. What they found was disturbing. The ship hadn't simply capsized or flooded. It had broken apart catastrophically. The bow section was separated from the main hull by over a mile. Analysis of the wreckage suggested the bow section failed first. Massive waves had struck the forward cargo hatches with such force that they collapsed. Once the forward holds flooded, the bow broke off. But modern bulk carriers are designed to survive exactly such conditions. Multiple naval architects examined the evidence. They concluded the Derbyshire's hatch covers were inadequately designed. The revelation led to international maritime safety reforms. Hundreds of ships were retrofitted with stronger hatches, but it didn't explain why the crew never sent distress signals. The Derbyshire's radio room was located in the superstructure far from the bow. Even if the forward section flooded, communications should have remained functional. Officers had minutes, perhaps longer, to transmit SOS. Some researchers suggest the failure was so sudden that crew were overwhelmed, but evidence from the wreckage shows the ship broke apart in stages. There was time. The Derbyshire investigation revealed systemic failures in ship design. It led to important safety improvements, but 44 people still died on a modern vessel that should have survived. The question that haunts investigators: why did no one call for help? Modern ships have multiple redundant systems. Emergency beacons activate automatically. Something prevented every single communication method from functioning. The pattern was undeniable now. Ships vanish. Sometimes wreckage is found, sometimes not. But the common thread is communication failure. That seems impossible given modern technology. In October 1980, just weeks after the Derbyshire, another large merchant vessel disappeared. The SS Poet was a steam-powered cargo ship carrying grain from Philadelphia to Egypt. The Poet carried 34 crew members and a cargo of corn. On October 24th, she sent a routine position report. Weather in the area was deteriorating. Tropical storm positioned nearby. That was the last communication from the Poet. Despite carrying modern radio equipment and emergency beacons, the ship went silent. The Coast Guard initiated search operations. They found nothing, not a life raft, not a floating grain cargo, not a single piece of debris. The official explanation cited the tropical storm, but the Poet was built to handle rough weather. Other ships in the area rode out the storm without difficulty. What makes the Poet case particularly strange is the cargo. Grain floats. If the ship had broken apart, thousands of tons of corn would have created a massive debris field. Searchers found nothing. Naval architects suggested sudden capsizing, but the Poet's design was stable. Capsizing would still produce debris. Emergency beacons would activate. Life rafts would deploy automatically. Some investigators pointed to the ship's age and condition. The Poet was built in 1944. Decades of service might have weakened her hull, but inspections before departure found her seaworthy. The timing troubled researchers. 2 major cargo ships lost in the same month, both in the Atlantic, both with experienced crews, both vanishing without distress signals. Families of the Poet's crew demanded investigation. The inquiry concluded with insufficient evidence to determine cause. The ship was declared lost with all hands. Decades later, oceanographers have searched for the Poet's wreckage. The Atlantic is deep and vast. Without precise location data, finding a sunken ship is nearly impossible. The Poet remains missing. 34 people vanished without trace. A ship carrying thousands of tons of floating cargo left no evidence of its destruction. Each case adds another layer to the pattern. Modern vessels experienced crews, sudden silence, minimal or no debris. Official explanations that satisfy bureaucracy but not logic. The most recent case on this list occurred in 2015, proving that modern technology provides no guarantee against mysterious disappearance. The SS El Faro was a cargo ship operating between Jacksonville, Florida, and Puerto Rico. On September 29, 2015, Captain Michael Davidson departed Jacksonville. Despite warnings of Hurricane Joaquin, the ship carried 33 crew members and a mixed cargo of containers and vehicles. El Faro was equipped with every modern safety system: satellite communication, GPS navigation, multiple redundant emergency beacons, weather routing software. Everything a contemporary vessel needs to avoid danger. The captain believed he could skirt the hurricane's edge. Weather predictions showed the storm tracking northwest. El Faro would pass to the east, avoiding the worst conditions, but Hurricane Joaquin strengthened and changed course. On October 1st, El Faro found herself in the direct path of a Category 4 hurricane with sustained winds of 130 miles per hour. The crew began sending distress messages: engine trouble, heavy listing, taking on water. Then the transmissions stopped. The Coast Guard launched immediate rescue operations. Hurricane conditions prevented initial searches. When aircraft arrived, they found only debris. Life rafts, containers, one body. Unlike previous cases, El Ferro's wreckage was located at 15,000 feet deep. The ship rested on the ocean floor. The vessel had sunk intact in one piece. What makes this case unusual is the evidence recovered. El Ferro's voyage data recorder was retrieved, the underwater equivalent of a black box. The recordings revealed the final hours aboard El Ferro, crew discussions, navigation decisions, the progressive flooding. The moment they realized the ship was doomed, official investigation concluded the captain made poor decisions. Continuing into hurricane conditions, delaying course changes, failing to recognize the severity until too late, but the recordings also revealed something troubling. The ship's emergency systems failed in sequence. Water overwhelmed pumps. Power systems went offline. Communications equipment ceased functioning. Modern vessels are designed with redundancy, multiple backup systems, yet El Ferro's safeguards failed systematically. When crew needed to abandon ship, the list was too severe. Life rafts couldn't deploy properly. The investigation led to safety reforms, better weather routing requirements, enhanced training, improved structural standards. But 33 people still died on a modern vessel with every technological advantage. What the El Ferro case proves is that technology alone cannot prevent maritime disaster. Human decision-making remains critical, but it also shows how quickly modern ships can be overwhelmed when conditions exceed design parameters. The voyage data recorder provided answers, but it also raised questions. Why did experienced officers continue into worsening conditions? Why were early warnings not heeded? The El Ferro sinking demonstrated that even with complete evidence, maritime disasters remain complex. Multiple factors converge: decisions made under stress, equipment limitations, natural forces beyond human control. We know where El Ferro is. We know how she sank. But understanding why decisions were made requires examining human psychology under extreme pressure. The case serves as a sobering reminder. Modern technology cannot eliminate risk. Ships still vanish. Crews still die. The ocean remains unforgiving. Among all these disappearances, one case stands apart for its sheer strangeness. The Tugmouth Electron was a trimaran yacht entered in the 1968 Sunday Times Golden Globe race. Sailor Donald Crowhurst departed England attempting a solo non-stop circumnavigation. Crowhurst was not an experienced ocean racer. He was a businessman, struggling financially, who saw the race as opportunity for fame and commercial success. The yacht was rushed in construction, inadequately tested. From the beginning, problems emerged: equipment failures, electrical issues. Crowhurst fell behind schedule. By the time he reached the Atlantic, continuing the race seemed impossible. But instead of withdrawing, Crowhurst made a fatal decision. He would fake the circumnavigation. He remained in the Atlantic, sailing in circles while transmitting false position reports suggesting he was racing around the world. The deception required maintaining two logbooks, one showing real positions, one showing the fabricated voyage. For months, Crowhurst sailed alone, creating an elaborate fiction. As the race progressed, Crowhurst's false reports suggested he was setting record-breaking pace. Media attention intensified. He was poised to win, but winning meant scrutiny, examination of his navigation records, questions he couldn't answer. In his isolation, Crowhurst began deteriorating mentally. His logbook entries became philosophical, rambling. He wrote about cosmic significance, time, existence. The entries suggest psychological breakdown. On July 10, 1969, the Tugmouth Electron was found drifting in the Atlantic. The yacht was intact, sails neatly furled, navigation equipment functional. Crowhurst was gone. The logbooks told the story. The real one, the fake one. The final entries spiraling into incoherence. Crowhurst's last entry was dated July 1st. He had apparently stepped off the boat into the ocean. Official verdict: suicide. A man overwhelmed by deception, facing inevitable exposure, chose death over dishonor. But questions remain. Crowhurst's body was never found. The exact circumstances of his death are unknown. Some have suggested accident rather than deliberate act. What makes the Tugmouth Electron relevant to mysterious disappearances is the psychological dimension: isolation, Stress, deception, these factors can drive experienced sailors to incomprehensible actions. Could some mysterious disappearances involve similar psychological breakdowns? Captains making irrational decisions, crews overcome by collective panic. The human element remains the most unpredictable factor in maritime safety. Technology can fail, weather can overwhelm, but human psychology under extreme conditions defies prediction. Crewhurst's disappearance was ultimately explained, but it demonstrated how maritime mysteries can stem from deeply personal crises invisible to outside observers. The pattern across all these cases becomes clear. Ships vanish for different reasons: structural failure, weather, human error, but common threads emerge. Communication failures appear consistently. Modern ships with redundant systems go silent without warning. This suggests catastrophic events overwhelming normal procedures. Lack of debris troubles investigators. Even ships sinking suddenly should leave floating wreckage. Life rafts, cargo, personal effects, yet some vanish completely. Weather explanations often feel inadequate. Yes, storms sink ships, but modern vessels are designed to survive severe weather. When they don't, questions arise about maintenance, design, or unknown vulnerabilities. Human factors remain central. Captains make decisions based on incomplete information. Crews face conditions beyond training. Stress and fatigue impair judgment. But some disappearances resist any rational explanation. The Witchcraft vanishing 19 minutes after calling for help, the Waratah leaving no trace in calm seas, the Poet disappearing without floating cargo debris. Official investigations often conclude with unsatisfying determinations: cause unknown, insufficient evidence, presumed lost. These phrases appear repeatedly in maritime records. Families of missing crew members are left without closure. No bodies recovered, no wreckage found, just absence and unanswered questions. Modern technology has improved maritime safety dramatically. Satellite tracking, automated distress beacons, enhanced weather forecasting. Ships are safer than ever in history, yet vessels still disappear. In 2015, the El Faro; in 1980, the Poet; in 1967, the Witchcraft. The ocean remains capable of erasing human presence. Some researchers suggest undiscovered phenomena: rogue waves larger than thought possible, underwater geological events, methane gas eruptions from the ocean floor. Others point to inadequate investigation resources. The ocean is vast. Deep-sea search technology is expensive. Many disappearances occur in remote areas where thorough searches are impractical. What remains undeniable is the pattern. The recurring elements: the consistent failure of communication systems, the absence of expected debris, the silence that descends on vessels carrying dozens of people. Each disappearance teaches lessons. Ship design improves. Safety protocols strengthen. Training evolves. Maritime safety advances incrementally, built on tragedy, but the lessons come at terrible cost. The 211 souls aboard the Waratah, the 306 on the Cyclops, the 44 crew of the Derbyshire, the 33 aboard El Faro, hundreds of people across decades, vanishing into an ocean that keeps its secrets. Their families waiting for answers that may never come. The ocean covers 71% of Earth's surface. Much of it remains unexplored. The depths hide countless wrecks, ships lost to time, weather, war, and unknown causes. Technology continues advancing. Satellite coverage expands, communication systems improve, search capabilities grow more sophisticated. Yet the fundamental truth remains unchanged. The sea is vast, powerful, and unforgiving. Human engineering can reduce risk but cannot eliminate it. These 10 cases represent a fraction of maritime mysteries. Hundreds more vessels have vanished under circumstances equally strange. Some will be found. Deep-sea exploration may locate the Waratah or the Poet, answer questions that have persisted for decades. Others may remain hidden forever. The ocean floor is vast, dark, and difficult to search. Without precise location data, finding a specific wreck requires extraordinary luck or resources. What we're left with is pattern without complete explanation. Ships vanish. Communication fails. Debris is minimal or absent. Official conclusions often satisfy procedure but not logic. The maritime industry implements changes: stricter hull inspections, better weather routing, enhanced emergency equipment. Each disaster drives improvement, but improvement doesn't resurrect the lost. It doesn't answer the fundamental questions. Why did experienced crews fail to send distress signals? Where did the wreckage go? What happened in those final moments? The families of missing sailors deserve answers. They deserve to know what happened to their loved ones. Too often, maritime investigations close with incomplete information. We owe it to the missing to continue asking questions, to demand thorough investigations, to not accept convenient explanations when evidence suggests deeper mysteries. These 10 ships, the Waratah, Cyclops, Carroll A, Joyita, Marine Sulphur Queen, Witchcraft, Derbyshire, Poet, Togmouth Electron, and El Faro represent hundreds of lives, hundreds of people who went to sea and never returned. Their disappearances connect across time. From 1909 to 2015, from sailing ships to modern cargo vessels, the ocean claims them all with equal indifference. What other vessels will join this list? What future disappearances will investigators struggle to explain? Maritime travel continues. Ships carry cargo and passengers across oceans every day. Most arrive safely, but somewhere, eventually, another ship will vanish, another crew will fall silent. Another investigation will conclude with insufficient evidence. The pattern suggests the ocean holds mysteries we haven't fully acknowledged, phenomena we don't understand, dangers we haven't identified, or perhaps the explanations are mundane, structural failures, human errors, weather events, coincidences that seem like patterns. The truth likely lies between extremes. Some disappearances have rational explanations obscured by incomplete evidence. Others may involve genuine anomalies we haven't yet explained. What remains certain is this: ships have vanished, people have died, families grieve without answers, and the ocean keeps its secrets. If these stories intrigue you, consider subscribing to Investigator Squirrel. There are more buried mysteries, more unexplained disappearances, and more questions waiting to surface. What other maritime cases defy explanation? Share your theories in the comments below.